Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is November the 13th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control and he does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. First off, I apologize for Friday, and I was even going to try to do a broadcast on Saturday. I was having a very, very rough day. I think it was due to some of the work I was doing on Thursday afternoon. Real quick, we are switching over from wood to propane heat in the house. Matter of fact, I just went and I ordered a propane condensing boiler for the house, and I finally got that. It's on property, so that sometime this week I'll have that hooked up. And hopefully the gas company will be in sometime later this week, early next week. But in the meantime, we got a cold snap and I needed to be able to heat the house. So I ordered a small load of wood. I had to finish cleaning out the wood furnace. It was raining, it was cold. And evidently those are not good combinations for someone that has a condition like me. That's called fibromyalgia. And I didn't get any sleep Thursday night. I was in pain all day Friday, all day Saturday, and most of the day yesterday. I'm still in some pain, but it's actually subsided because I just really couldn't do anything, so I had to rest up. So I apologize for missing Friday. I apologize for not being able to do a show on Saturday. I was going to do a veterans show on Saturday. And just happy Veterans Day, happy 242nd Marine birthday, and if you're a veteran and you're listening to the show or watching this show, I appreciate your service, and I am a veteran also, so I know from where you come on all this. And I just got to do something here real quick. Anyway, so I do apologize for that. I got the show going today, and today's show is going to be I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, but not too much. And basically, what I mean by that is we're going to talk about the main thing, or the main subject today is Judge Roy Moore. And I've seen it's been all over the as far as the social media. I'm trying to delete a couple videos here. It said my oh, crud. I didn't want to do that. Oh, I want to delete that. I'm sorry, folks. I'm trying to make some space here on my, let's just skip that. Okay. It said I was having a space issue on my hard disk on my production computer, and I tape all the shows, and if I don't need them, I forget to delete those. I apologize for that. Judge Roy Moore has been all over the media. The sexual allegations that were brought against him, I was dubious about those to begin with because of the original source, which is the Washington Post. Although, like I said, just because it's on the Washington Post doesn't mean I dismiss it just outright. I want to source it by other sources and materials. Well, lo and behold, I woke up today after I went and did my therapy and got home. I was watching a little bit of the news before I went and picked up my furnace, and One American News Network is reporting some major inconsistencies in the reporting, or at least by the two women that have come forward so far. I'm not going to name their names. I'm still looking into this, but I trust One American News Network. They said there's some major inconsistencies, especially with the youngest one being 14, says she was talking to him on her phone. Her mom said, well, she doesn't have a phone, never had a phone in her bedroom at that age. And then come to find out, and these could be a contributing factor. I'm not discounting, I'm not putting these things out as discounting the young lady. I think an investigation, needs to be done, but she has been in and out of drug rehab. Her mother said she was up to like $140,000 in debt. And I haven't been able to confirm how much the Washington Post paid her, but she was paid for her story. So, like I said, there's some very big inconsistencies, incongruities, It's not passing the sniff test, as it were, as far as I'm concerned. And not to cast aspersions on the young lady if it did happen, but folks, we are living in an age here where just the mere accusation is ruining people's lives, is absolutely, devastating people's lives. We have the hypocrisy of the Lamestream media. They're hammering former Judge Roy Moore worse than they're hammering Hollywood and the Weinsteins and the what was it, C.K. Lewis. I never really did follow him that much. I saw him in a couple movies, but just the sleaziness of Hollywood. It seems like they're backing off, and they're not really going after the Weinsteins and those that were perpetuating or caught up in. I don't even say caught up in. That's a bad term too. That were allegedly committing sexual assaults. We see, I talked about this last week, we see former Congressman Anthony Weiner had to report to federal prison to serve his sentence for sexting a young underage lady and got caught, and rightly so. I think, that's despicable behavior on this person's part. But we don't see them going after the Hollywood crowd. And I mentioned about this last week, and I'll mention it again today. It's mainly because the Hollywood crowd and those that are shielding them contribute to the DNC and the different candidates, including and up to Hillary Clinton in this last presidential campaign. So there is a double standard in the Lamestream media. And the Washington Post is one of the leaders in this. And as you know, Washington Post is owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a huge DNC contributor. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, he is using the Washington Post as a propaganda arm of the DNC. Because I'm one of these guys, I let a story percolate. I might mention it, but I'll let a story percolate a couple days because you don't always know all the facts right up front, everything that's going on. It just amazes me how many people rush to judgment. They rush to judgment. Now, my thing is, this is my personal opinion here, from everything in the past, especially with Judge Roy Moore and the controversial Ten Commandment monument that he was ordered by federal courts to actually get rid of. He was actually, as a Supreme Court justice in Alabama, he was putting the kibosh on the removal of that, and the federal court stepped in, which I honestly, the federal courts, in my opinion, on this state matter, whether a state allows outside their Supreme Court the Ten Commandment monument or not, that's a state issue. That is not a federal issue. But this is the times we live in. If progressives and anti-freedom folks cannot get what they want accomplished at the local or state level, they have no qualms about going to the federal government to get their wants, needs, and desires exercised. That they put forth these things. We don't want this Ten Commandment monument up here. The state of Alabama is not getting rid of it, so we'll go to the federal court. And the federal court should have threw that right back at the states and said, this is not a federal matter. This is a state matter. It needs to stay at the state. But they don't do that. And this is the problem with the system we have today. It's not with the system in particular, but this is the problem of the way power is administered in our republic. And the federal government, especially the judiciary, overreaches a lot. I mean, constitutionally overreaches a lot. But they're never held accountable. Congress never steps in and say, whoa, boys and girls, this is a constitutional overreach and we're going to fight you on this. And ultimately, the Congress has the final say in the cases that they absolutely can, or that they actually adjudicate. Congress can step in and say, look, you're not going to adjudicate this because it is outside the constitutional purview of the federal government and needs to remain a state issue. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. But my reading of the Constitution is just that. It's the reading, and I've been told by constitutional lawyers that my reading is correct on this, and I've yet to find an example of Congress actually reining in the overreaching judicial branch. And so we have an overreaching judicial branch, and now we have an overreaching fourth estate, as it were, the free press. There are so many, and actually, getting back to Judge Roy Moore's case here and sexual assault, allegations or sexual assault, harassment, whatever you want to call it, sexual harassment, sexual assault. I'll get it out here in a second. Those need to be looked into, but the feminist culture, the third and fourth wave feminists, the toxic feminists we see today, especially on YouTube, but also at the Lamestream media level, they got everybody believing that we live in a rape culture and that false reporting of rapes or assaults or harassment is very minuscule when it's actually way bigger percentage of the rape accusations, the sexual assaults and harassment accusations. It's bigger than what they would lead you to believe. But this is what's happening in our society today. We sensationalize the fringe LGBTQ agenda. Less than 4% of the population identifies as such. And yet, looking at Hollywood, looking at the Lamestream media and the way they report things, you would think that they were the vast majority of the population. Now, I'm not saying because they're a small part of the population they need to be abused, nay. But to actually act like they are part of the norm in normal society is wrong also. So I think here we have, with Judge Roy Moore, we have an actual episode of the tail wagging the dog. You know, the Democrats, the anti-freedom folks, the progressives out there, they want Republicans to fail at every level. And they haven't been able to do it successfully until they've gotten to this sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape allegations, things like this. And now they see a vehicle, whether the accusations are true or not, they see a vehicle here that they can use to try to take down the Trump administration. Now, just like last week, I spent a couple days talking about this, that a lot of the George Soros funded groups out there are just breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back, saying, you know, look what we did in Virginia and New Jersey and how this is an indictment on the Trump agenda. But when you look at the two candidates for the New Jersey and the losing candidates for New Jersey and Virginia, they distance themselves from Donald Trump. So if they distance themselves from Donald Trump, how can that be an indictment on the Trump agenda? And I put that out several times over the weekend to Common Cause and Indivisible Guide and Let America Vote. No comments. Well, no, I'll take it back. I had one. The guy said I must be living in a unicorn la-la land. You know, and you know, those type of comments there, I sort of brush off. I read them. I may reply to them, but I sort of brush them off because they're coming from... They're not coming from a standpoint of facts and truth. They're coming from a standpoint of wants, needs, and desires. You know, what are the wants, needs, and desires of progressive social democrats, the DNC? What are they? Well, they want to take over. You know, they thought they had it in the bag with Hillary Clinton, and they lost their collective minds when she actually lost, and they're still not over themselves. They had a scream fest or holler fest, you know, on the anniversary of, I was sharing some memes that this is the first anniversary that Hillary Clinton's not president. Yay! And they were literally beside themselves. They were actually almost going insane, you know, over this type of, you know, how dare you say that, you know, and most of them, a lot of them will not concede the election. They still think that Hillary Clinton won and she should be president. And it is so far removed from the election. And this whole Russian thing, you know, President Trump met with Putin, he was at a meeting and he was there with Putin. I'm not sure if he actually met separately with Putin, but he ran into him, talked to him. And, President Trump came out and said, I just don't believe there's any Russian collusion on our, he may not have said our part, but you know what he was meaning. And quite frankly, everything during the Mueller special investigation is actually pointing back to the DNC and Hillary Clinton as far as the collusion's going. And I'm still wondering where the rest of the indictments are. It shouldn't take this long to find out all this stuff. He sure went through Papadopoulos, which that's still kind of funny in and of itself, that this guy was an unpaid campaign volunteer, but the way the Lamestream media, portrays him is that this dude had the ear of the president direct without any filters. And that just wasn't the case, and they're still trying to build this up. A lot of my antagonists on Facebook are still trying to hold this up, and I keep laughing at them. I'm sorry. I have to laugh at them because they're reaching, they're stretching. And it's just, this uranium one is one of the biggest stories that needs to be investigated that actually has Russian collusion involved in it, which has the Clinton Foundation, the Obama administration, the Obama Justice Department, has fingerprints all over this darn thing. And I'm afraid, unless Mueller is totally in the bag for the DNC, I'm afraid the indictments that are going to come out are going to be very devastating for those around Hillary Clinton and the DNC. It just is. So, but again, getting back to the main story of Judge Roy Moore, the biggest problem I see here is people's rush to judgment. Their rush to judgment. And if, getting back to, I got a little sidetracked there, wouldn't you think these allegations would have came out during his struggle with the federal court system? That would have been the best time that these allegations should have came out. Why now? And even this is way after these allegations come out, way after he's secured the Republican nomination. He's going to run against the Democrat for Senate. They're just now bringing these things out. Why weren't they brought out during the primaries? Could it be that if they're true, could it be the women were intimidated? Yes, it could be that. I'm not discounting that. But if they're not true, which the more I'm reading into this and the more I'm reading about this, the more it doesn't pass the sniff test. Or as them old country boys say, this dog just ain't hunting. This issue just is not going to fly out there. And so we have to, folks, I need to caution people on this, and I shouldn't have to. We're all adults here. But I think way too many people give too much credit to the Lamestream media without verifying what they're reading. I made that mistake years ago, and I hopefully I haven't made it. I haven't made that mistake for 4 or 5 years now, maybe even longer. And if I have, I apologize, and I'll make corrections on this program, which I have in the past. But I'll trust them, but verify. And there's certain sources that I don't even extend that courtesy to. New York Times, New York Post, LA Times, Atlanta Constitutional, Huffington Post, Mother Jones, Slate, Salon. I'll read their articles and see what they're saying, then I'll try to run the references of what they're talking about. But when they don't even give references that you can actually run, that makes your job of trying to make sure what you're reading is accurate or not that much harder. And I believe they do that on purpose, and people just give up. And either they give up and believe what they're saying, or they just, like me, I don't have enough time in and of myself. And even if I had a research staff, I don't know if I would have them waste that much time on trying to prove or disprove an article by one of the Lamestream media outlets I just named, because they're too lazy to put links and run references, put the references in so people can see what they're saying and see what's accurate or not. Now with me, when I report something on the show, and I'm not reporting, I'm commentating. I'm not a reporter, I'm not a journalist. I commentate on the news of the day. I commentate on social issues of the day. But when I talk about something, you can go over to my show notes page at thedanclementshow.com, and you can look in. Right now, it used to be just a blog posting with an audio link. Now I've totally switched it over to podcast, actual podcast where it's got a link up to it, a player in there, and you can see all the show notes down below that. But you can run, if I'm talking about something, you can run the references. You can see the stories that I'm talking about, and you can run these references. And that's how I judge articles. That's how I judge anything that I read, is what kind of links they put in there and what kind of articles they're actually going to put forth. I got some stories in here from, where is it at here? GOPUSA.com. And one is referencing a Washington Times article, and the other one's referencing a New York Daily News article. So I can go back and research these things. And this one here is talking about the Drexel University professor and his comments on the Texas church murders. And it's ridiculous what this guy says. It really is. Matter of fact, I had to put my most ardent Facebook antagonist in her place. And I hate doing that, but I had to put her in her place because she cited, and this is a real side note here, and we'll get into the ads and the rest of the show here. Usually I don't try to go back and see where she actually spouts some of her idiocies and nonsense, because eventually through the course of my show, I'll come across an article. I'm like, this is almost word for word, verbatim, what she said in her Facebook rant without giving any references. And I look and I find, like this article here about the Texas church murders, about this being a powerfully dangerous male whiteness, has to do with 20 to 30-year-old white males. What are we going to do about these guys? And my response to her is, the last church shooting before this was in Antioch, Tennessee, and was committed by a black man. So what does that do to your narrative? It blows it up. It totally blows it up. And I haven't heard anything back from her. I doubt it I am. She's probably, and she can do this. She can send out posts and leave me out of it without defriending me. And which, she can do that if she wants. But again, she lives in an echo chamber. And that's all she's ever going to live in, is an echo chamber, if she doesn't look outside of that and see what's actually going on in the world out here. It's just, again, it just amazes me about these folks. Today's show is being brought to you by an affiliate marketer of mine, Bluehost. Bluehost is actually my hosting service. Fall off the log easy to sign up for. Fall off the log easy to use some of their standard templates to start your web presence on, your presence on the web, whether it's a blog or it's you're trying to sell something or have a business you're trying to promote, whatever your needs might be. Go to danclementshow.com and click on Bluehost in the upper banner up there, and it'll take you to their site, and you'll get a free domain, you'll get a free site builder, you'll get a one-click WordPress install, which is for everybody because it's a WordPress-ready web hosting service, Bluehost is, and you get 24/7 support. And matter of fact, not only that, I was having issues when I switched over from blog to podcast, and my player was not showing up on each episode. And I was frustrated. So I actually went into the help section, and lo and behold, I had a setting that wasn't set right. Clicked on that setting, and now when I post a player automatically appears now, which is, fantastic. So if you have a problem, even before you go to try to use their help center, they have a lot of questions that are asked. You can Google it, or I DuckDuckGo it. I don't use Google anymore. I use a web search engine called DuckDuckGo, and I find the answers. And folks, they're out there. There's a lot of people that like WordPress sites, and Bluehost is one of the best ones out there for my money anyway. So please, if you like what you hear on the Dan Clement Show and you want to help me out, support some of my affiliate marketers, especially like Bluehost.com. All right. Today's daily Bible reading comes from 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 10 through 13. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 10 through 13. But you have carefully followed my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, suffering, love, and perseverance, persecutions, afflictions, which happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and Lystra. What persecutions I endured, and out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yes, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution, but evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. What Paul's telling Timothy here is, especially in verse 12, yes, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. It's not that we go out of our way to look for it, but folks, just like today, there are the skeptic communities out there on YouTube. I'm going to pick on YouTube. On YouTube, the atheist communities on YouTube, the feminist communities on YouTube, these ethical societies on Facebook. They're all against Christianity, and they will persecute you for that. Whether it's in person or whether it's on social media, they will persecute you for this. And that's something that you need to be aware of. Today's quote meal comes from Martin Luther King Jr. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. That's a very good quote. Especially, I've been really doing a lot of research on YouTube and why YouTube algorithms are doing what they're doing, and why they won't demonetize some sites or put them in limited mode, or other ideologies. And some ideologies, they're really quick to do so. And it's again, there's a lot of controversy going on out there, and it really shows the character of a lot of people who endure it. They can comment on it, but endure what's going on, because in the end, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out, but where a person stands at times of challenge and controversy is the ultimate measure of a person. Today's short Bible lesson comes from Wes McAdams at radicallychristian.com, and I encourage you to go over to the Dan Clement Show and click on the link. Romans 10:10, re-examine, with the mouth one confesses and is saved. Now, the reason why this needs to be re-examined is because there is a denominational ideology out there that says that's all you have to do is confess and you'll be saved. And there's nothing else you need to do, but they neglect other teachings in the Bible that talk about salvation, and they neglect, it's like grocery cart religion. They just pick this one thing that they agree with and forget everything else. And you have to take the whole of God's Word to understand God's Word in whole. All right, let me see if I have this. I should have this up here. Okay. Now, over at Daily Wire's reporting, they report us on November 10th that the National Republican Senatorial Committee pulls funding from Moore over sexual abuse allegations. On Friday, amidst allegations that Senate Republican candidate Roy Moore sexually molested a 14-year-old girl, the National Republican Senatorial Committee pulled their financial support for Moore's campaign, according to the Daily Beast. A joint fundraising committee benefiting Moore and a handful of Republican Party organs filed paperwork with the Federal Election Commission on Friday, removing the National Republican Senatorial Committee as one of its beneficiaries. Going forward, the committee's funding will benefit Moore's Senate campaign, the Alabama Republican Party, and the National Committee, but not the NRSC. A new poll on Friday showed Moore's commanding lead over Democratic opponent Doug Jones dropping precipitously. The two are now in a dead heat. The question will be whether this is a low point for Moore, or whether more allegations surface to grant credibility to original allegations. The Washington Post story included 4 different women alleging Moore approached them while they were teenagers and he was in his 30s, with 30 supporting witnesses overall. Furthermore, Decision Desk HQ polls show that 54% of Alabama voters think Moore should stay on the ballot, including 72.9% of Republicans. That's an extraordinary high number considering the seriousness of the allegations, but Moore has denied all charges, providing impetus to his defenders. Moore could still easily win his Senate seat, particularly if these allegations fade in the rearview mirror. The NRSC's lack of support could be seen by Moore's supporters as just another example of an establishment Republican Party willing to pull away from non-establishment candidates, rallying Moore's base to his defense. And so there's 4 total women. Last I read last week, before Friday and Saturday, was that there was only 2, but now they say there's 4. But again, One American News is actually reporting and has a video report on this. I don't have it because they lag on their website, but they're reporting some inconsistencies in the women's story. And they're pointing out the one that was a DNC party, part of the DNC and Hillary campaign in 2016. So there, and it's not just because of her association makes her allegations false, but it does cast a shadow over them. Because we know that the DNC and Hillary, especially Hillary Clinton, are not adverse to doing things like this. I mean, Hillary Clinton's career since Slick Willie became governor of Arkansas has been to put out what she termed the bimbo eruptions. And part of her job in this was to falsely accuse the quote-unquote bimbos, as she saw them, the women that brought forth rape and sexual abuse allegations against Bill Clinton, was to sort of rig the narrative. You know, not sort of, she did, and to spread all sorts of rumors and lies about them, whether they were true or not. And so just that one there alone, you have to doubt. You have to doubt it. You have to doubt it until other evidence comes forward. And just because, again, I want to say this, and I know some women out there are going to get mad at me for saying this, just because a woman brings forth allegations does not necessarily mean that they are so, that they are true and they're accurate. Because we've seen, just by the third and fourth wave feminists in this country have put out a false narrative that, you know, that the false accusations are smaller than what they actually are. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. And so I think we need to be very cautious. And I think, honestly, I know in the arena of, or as I should say, the court of public opinion, verdicts are rendered very quickly with very little evidence. And I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to say either way. I'm just putting up the ideas that these accusations may not be what they seem to be, and they need to be further investigated. Especially the one of the 14-year-old girl that claimed that she talked to Judge Roy Moore on the phone and in her bedroom, and her mom said no, she doesn't have a phone in her bedroom. And this is what One American News Network is actually putting forth, that she was in and out of rehab, has had issues with drugs all of her life. As a matter of fact, before this story, she was in pretty deep debt, and the Washington Post paid her for this story. Right there, that sort of casts, to me, that casts doubt on this whole thing, on hers anyway. And again, and I don't know how we as a nation are going to get around this, where women actually wait to bring their accusations against, against those who they think raped them or know that they raped them. I won't say think, but these sexual allegations against the perpetrators. And this is this is going to be very unfeminist of me to say this, but where are the big brothers? Where are the male friends of these victims? Why aren't they stepping forth and saying, hey, look, what you went through is bad, and you shouldn't have gone through it. You shouldn't have had to go through that. And I'm going to step in and help protect you, especially if these are true, because we know that especially powerful men and some powerful women will go to about any length to keep these type of stories from surfacing. But again, and I'm not going to name names. I won't even say where I was at when this was happening. But a young lady I knew a few years back was, in my opinion, and I voiced my opinion a couple times, even though I wasn't her dad. Her and her dad were kind of estranged. But I voiced my opinion a couple times that I didn't like this boy that she was dating. And even though it wasn't my place to say so, and I even told her, I said, it's not my place, but this is my opinion. If you want to talk, let's talk. And that's where I left it at. And there was even one point where one of her boyfriends had hit her. And I confronted him out in the parking lot. And I told him, I told him I was not related to her. I wasn't dating her. I looked at her more as a little sister. And if I found out that he had done that again, because I said, I can't prove it, but I'm just letting you know, if she comes to work with another bruise on her face or something like that, or she's hurt, you're the first one I'm going to look for. And it wasn't soon after that that they were no longer dating. It was a couple months later, and there's some other trouble that they both got into. But she's since straightened her life out and found a really nice man. But, you know, I was willing, even though it may not have been my place, and she could have told me to step off, and she never did. You know, I felt kind of protective of her. And so my question is, where are the dads? Where are the brothers? Where are, you know, let's go out, you know, cousins, you know, close cousins. You know, where are these men that should be helping to protect these young ladies from this type of sexual harassment, rape, the whole 9 yards? I know they can't be around 24/7, but I don't see any. And all these stories, all this Hollywood sleaze that's going on, I don't hear any male friends of these young ladies who were sexually harassed by these powerful men. I don't see them stepping forward and say, you know, and protecting them. I don't. and I don't mean to laugh, but folks, it's like a one-sided narrative going on out there. And like I said, I'm not casting aspersions on the young ladies who feel threatened and stuff like that. I don't understand what they're going through. I can't even empathize with that, because I can't remember the last time someone threatened me. You know, someone powerful enough to threaten me to, you know, to scare me off of anything. And again, I can't imagine what they're going through. But again, I can't imagine them going through all this stuff without one of their male friends stepping forward and saying, this isn't right, and we need to hold this scumbag accountable. I know what I would do if someone touched my daughter. And I know I'm a Christian, and this isn't bravado when I say this, but I know my temperament, and I know my love and protection for my daughter. And I'm not saying I'd kill them or anything, but they better hope the police get to them before I do. You know, I can't imagine honestly, I cannot imagine what I would do if someone hurt my daughter sexually. Like I said, I'd like to say, you know, as a Christian that I wouldn't go off on them, but I can't. I can't say that. And it makes me mad that there's, and maybe this is because of this caustic feminism that's going on out there, that these young men, they don't feel like they dare step forward and put out a helping hand, because they might be seen as some, you know, I don't know what goes through men's minds. I really don't. You know, when it comes to subjects like this, I just know how scummy it is, and how if these allegations against Judge Roy Moore are true, where were the men in these women's lives? You know, that would have held a Judge Roy Moore accountable, that wouldn't have been afraid of him and his, you know, his judgeship or his, his supposed power. And again, I think there's a hypocrisy here in the Lamestream media. It's like almost wall-to-wall Judge Roy Moore out there, but it really wasn't wall-to-wall with Harvey Weinstein. Matter of fact, most of the news I was getting about Harvey Weinstein and all these other men out in Hollywood was coming from alternative media, the new Main Street media. You know, and it just, again, you got to call into question the Lamestream media, the old guard, and their hypocrisy. You know, here they're throwing under the bus Anthony Weiner, and yet they're not. Honestly, I've seen plenty in the new media, the new Main Street media, But I haven't seen anything in the old lamestream media where they're calling for like these Hollywood execs and these producers and these directors and these comedians, that are, I got a problem, or like Kevin Spacey. Well, I was drunk but I'm gay. As if that's supposed to excuse pedophilia. And yet, I don't hear any of the drums beating in the lamestream media to have these men indicted and have these allegations investigated to the full extent of the law, and hopefully maybe prosecute these guys to the fullest extent of the law and throw them in prison. There's a double standard that goes on here in America, and I'm afraid Judge Roy Moore might be caught up in that double standard. All right. Let's see here. Well, let's go to this Texas thing, and then I got a couple more things. If I have time, I'll get to it about wanting something doesn't make it a human right, things like that, GOP tax bills, stuff like that. All right. Texas church murders rooted in powerfully dangerous male whiteness. And this is a Washington Times story shared with us by GOP USA. So a madman with a lengthy history of mental instability and violence strolls into a church in Texas and begins blasting away, killing 26 and injuring scores more. And a Drexel University professor finds the cause of the mayhem and madness was whiteness. Is that a disease or something? A new psychological disorder? Moreover, is it contagious? Should Americans grab their children and run? According to online Drexel University professor George Ciccariello-Maher, maybe. He told Democracy Now!, a very, very unbiased website, folks, in a recent interview that there is an institutional apparatus that simply encourages white males to feel as though they are on the losing side of history, the victims, so to speak. And it's that victimhood mentality, he went on, Campus Reform noted, that leads many to lash out violently. Ciccariello-Maher argued, Campus Reform reported President Donald Trump makes hay out of the fact that white men in particular feel as though they are the victims of this society despite being in absolute control of it. And this is something that is powerfully dangerous and is why we're not seeing only the rise in violent attacks more generally and the rise of far-right movements, but we're certainly seeing, clearly sort of some very serious incidents of mass violence as well. And I have another article I've got to share because I have a link here. If this sounds familiar, it's because we've heard from this racist before. And yes, this professor, Ciccariello-Maher, is a racist. And I shared a meme. Let me get over here to Facebook. I shared a meme last night by, I'm not sure if it's Ken Burns or something along that lines. Let me, I got to find this real quick here because I've been saying this. Matter of fact, I say this every morning in my introduction to the show, fighting for your right just to be an American. And I've been saying this for many, many years now. And it amazes me how when I share stuff like this, that, I'll tell you what, let me come over to this other part over here because my brother-in-law actually commented on this, and then I made a comment. I've been talking about this since 2007, and he pretty much, my brother-in-law pretty much told me, but you're not black, so I don't count. That's what he told me, because I said, this is what I've been saying from the beginning of my show in late 2007. And this is by Pastor Mark Burns. I've never heard a white American say, I'm a European American. We've got to stop being African American or Hispanic American. We've got to just start seeing ourselves as Americans. And so my brother-in-law pretty much dissed me. I hate to say that. I won't say which one. And I pretty much told him I'm an American. The color of my skin doesn't matter. And he says it does to them. Ha 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 ha. You know, some people just don't think before they post or they type things in. Like I said, I've been saying this since late 2007 that I just want, fight for your right just to be an American. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I care if you're an American or not. And if you're American, we need to be colorblind. That doesn't mean we need to be blind to oppression and atrocities that happen. But in America today, oppression and atrocities are not institutionalized. They happen very widespread throughout the country in very isolated incidents, and it does not speak to the rest of us. Just like this church shooting out in Southern Springs, Texas, doesn't indict all white men because a white man who happens to be was mentally unstable perpetrated this. And my point to talking about all these things like this professor, and folks, if you got kids going to Drexel University and this guy's their professor, you need to get them out of his courses. This guy is toxic. This guy will ruin your kids intellectually. Because it's not about whiteness, because in the end, my buddy Dave pointed this out, when this first happened, he was the one that brought this to my attention. Antioch, Tennessee Church of Christ shooting was carried out by a black man. So given that, should I extrapolate out, like Professor Maher has said, that this is a problem with all blacks? Now, if I said that, you would be justified and slap me down for that. Because I never said that. You can go back and listen to any of my shows I talked about this. I never once said that. This black man in Antioch, Tennessee, took it upon himself to go in shooting up a church. It's not an indictment against the whole black race here in America. He decided that, not his race, not his association with other black people. He decided it. Just like this perpetrator of the Southern Springs Baptist Church massacre or shooting, he decided. I didn't prompt him to do it. There was no white conspiracy out there that prompted him to do this. He took it upon himself to do this. It's not an indictment against all whites everywhere. And this type of toxicity that pours out of these college campuses is ridiculous. Now, he goes on to say in this, yes, clearly, sort of, that is, meaning kind of, but not really. Don't let the wishy-washy wordage get in the way of the message, though. Read on, he's not quite done. Whiteness is never seen as a cause in and of itself of these kinds of massacres, he said, but apparently they should. Whiteness, Ciccariello-Maher said, is a structure of privilege and is a structure of power and a structure that, when it feels threatened, lashes out. Whiteness is powerfully dangerous. So an individual, no matter, I don't care what their skin color is, an individual takes it upon themselves, either at Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas, Antioch, Tennessee, or Southern Springs, Texas. They take it upon themselves to do this shooting, so it's an indictment on whatever race they're a part of. Unbelievable. And this guy is teaching kids. This guy is teaching some Americans' children out there. Powerfully dangerous indeed. In fairness, Ciccariello-Maher also said mental illness couldn't be completely disregarded as a mitigating factor in mass shootings like the one at the Texas church, but its witnesses say that more powerful danger he suggested. And this again goes back to a WND, a World Net Daily news item or article. This guy did research on these guys that perpetrated these mass shootings in America's history, since like the 60s in the Austin, Texas University tower shooting, that psychotropic or psychiatric drugs prescribed drugs, every one of them were taking these. And I don't know if these are going to come out they actually said that he was on the Mandolin Bay shooter was on antidepressants. I'm not sure. I have to go back and dig up the Antioch church shooter. This guy at Southern Springs, he was definitely mentally unstable, and I wonder if he wasn't on depression drugs, if he would have been, maybe he'd have been calmer. I don't know. I just don't know. But for this guy, this Drexel University professor is just, he's a nut job. I'm sorry, he's a nut job. This is the same guy who recently tweeted, "All I want for Christmas is white genocide." Campus Reform reported it, and he's now exiled from the physical Drexel University for unspecific reason, but he's still teaching online. He's not allowed to teach at the campus, physical campus, but he's still allowed to teach online. What? These administrators, honestly, some of these administrators of these colleges, they got to go too. They honestly have to go because they have no clue either. They just don't. The only takeaway here seems to be this: parents, do not send your kids to Drexel University. It's not worth the chance of exposure to the lunatic fringe among the teaching staff. Now, this is the other article they're talking about. This was back October 12th. Offensive Drexel University professor gets threats. A Drexel University professor was placed on leave after receiving threats due to his tweets posted after the recent Las Vegas attack. George Ciccariello-Maher, an associate professor of politics and global studies, received backlash after tweeting that the Las Vegas shooting, which killed 58 and injured around 500, was what happens when those who believe they deserve to own the world who think it's being stolen from them. Ciccariello-Maher began a controversial string of tweets detailing his thoughts on the Vegas shooting the day after it occurred. The narrative of white victimization has been gradually built over the last 40 years. He continued to tweet saying, "It is the spinal column of Trumpism and most extreme form of the white genocide myth." He also took on liberals, saying liberal escapism means people will simply continue to ask any questions and propose any non-solutions rather than discussing who kills and why. To believe that someone who would shoot down 50 people wouldn't circumvent any gun laws you pass is the height of delusion, he wrote. And this is, I'm going to stop reading here. This is part of the problem with these liberals out there, especially these college professors. If someone's intent on doing evil, they're going to do it. We see over in Australia that the left likes to use as a, this is how we should do the guns here in the United States, and it's a total myth that they're perpetrating about Australia. There are some people over there that are resorting to arson to kill their victims, and it kills other people also. So again, it's not the guns, it's not the match. It's the hearts, mind, and souls of the people that are doing these things. And again, we have these not white, but we have these, honestly, I don't know if this guy's white or not. And honestly, I don't care. We have these college professors out there that are towing an ideology that is very toxic to the American Republic and American thinking. And this idea that, like he said here, to believe that someone who would shoot down 50 people wouldn't circumvent any gun laws you pass is the height of delusion. Chicago. This guy must be totally delusional because all these folks that I deal with on social media always leave out Chicago. Oh, we need tighter gun laws. Well, they're not working in Chicago. Criminals are still getting guns. Criminals are still shooting each other in the street and innocent bystanders at the same time. So clearly gun control laws aren't the answer. And they never ever deal. I'm serious. They do not deal with Chicago because to them, Chicago is an outlier instead of being exactly the argument against gun control. Because it's not legal guns that are being used. It's illegal guns that are being used. Ciccariello-Maher, who has drawn prior social media controversy for a post saying, "All I want for Christmas is white genocide," and another saying he wanted to vomit after an airline passenger gave up his seat to a soldier, has received numerous threats since he published the Las Vegas tweets. Now, I want to say this. I don't think anybody needs to threaten him on Twitter. I mean, all you do is let this guy give himself enough rope and he'll hang himself by his own words. All right, so I don't condone, these threats on Twitter. Due to a growing number of threats directed at Professor George, I'm just going to say George from now on, and increased concerns about both his safety and the safety of Drexel's community, after careful consideration, the university has decided to place Professor George on administrative leave. The university said in a statement, "We believe this is a necessary step to ensure the safety of our campus." His tweets were first picked up by the Daily Caller, where they quickly spread to other conservative media outlets like Breitbart News, The Blaze, The Turning Point, among others. The comments also landed on the conspiracy theory website InfoWars and various other forums. Ciccariello-Maher wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post in which he said his string of tweets was relatively uncontroversial and claimed he was being targeted by a coordinated right-wing campaign to undermine our academic freedom. No, when you post idiotic, unsubstantiated, unfounded, untrue tweets that cast aspersions across a whole race, that's not a vast right-wing campaign to undermine the academic freedom. It's your idiocy that is undermining your own academic credentials and standing. So again, it amazes me, folks, how these people operate. It really does. Now, just a couple other things. I won't get into them because they're still working out. GOP taxes bill that cancels $23 billion in credits claimed by illegal immigrants. $23 billion. That's a lot of scratch, folks. And there are people, these pro-immigration folks, and I'm saying pro-immigration because they're pro-illegal immigration. They're not pro-immigration. I'm pro-immigration. I'm against illegal immigration. I'm pro-legal immigration. They're up in arms about this. They're just all beside themselves that this GOP bill cancels $23 billion. My question is, why the federal government is even giving illegal aliens anything besides holding the door open for them to go back to their countries? And I know I'm a heartless so-and-so for saying that, and that they're fleeing countries that have a lot of problems. Fix the country you come from. Get your citizens together that feel like you do and start trying to fix your country instead of bringing your problems here and trying to change our country to look like your old country. I never understood that. Refugees come here and all they want to do, especially Muslims, they want to come here and change the United States. They want to institute Sharia law. They want to do away with the Constitution. They want to do away with women's rights. And I say, no, thank you. And because I say no, thank you, I'm the bad guy. But I say, no, thank you. I don't want that. If you wanted that, go back to your old country if that's what you want. Don't come here and try to change our country, my country, into something that resembles what you left. And then we have to suffer with those consequences? No. And I will be the bad guy. You can call me the bad guy all you want. I'm right here. I'm sorry. I'm right. Okay. Delaware considers letting students decide race, gender without parents' permission. Delaware, Maryland, these states down there are just going so liberal so fast that I don't know where it's going to stop. And along with that story, I have this story from Daily Wire. A 12-year-old boy transitions to female, then this happens just 2 years later. The kid suffers from gender dysphoria. At 12 years old, he goes through the operation to switch him to a girl. Then 2 years later, he's like, I made a mistake. Now he's going through painful surgeries to reverse all that. Instead of treating gender dysphoria as it should be, a mental illness, the LGBTQ community wants to normalize this and say it's normal to do this. And it's not. You do not treat a mental illness like gender dysphoria, and I know I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I've read enough about it over the past few years or so, that most of the experts, I'd say the vast majority of experts say that transition surgery is not the answer. It is not the answer, especially for a 12-year-old. And these virtue signaling parents, I would have never let my son go through something like that. And honestly, I believe it to be a form of child abuse, these parents that do this. That they're abusing their children. Really. So those are just some of the other stories I have in the show notes page. And I have a really good one I want you to read over at fee.org by Gary M. Gales. Wanting something doesn't make it a human right. Wanting health insurance, wanting health care, wanting a house, wanting food isn't a human right. It just isn't. Now, I don't want to see anybody left out in the cold or starving or anything like that, but to go around and say, I have a right to your labor because I want this, doesn't make it right and doesn't make it so. And actually, you cause more problems than you solve when you do that. You really do. And there is something, honestly, folks, there is something to the old saying about if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. There's a lot to be said about that old saying in that. So, folks, that's the music. That's the end of the show. Please give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. If you want to help support the show, I'm doing a little begging here. I have a Patreon account set up. I have a PayPal account set up. Please, if you can see your way to give me a monthly donation to help the Dan Clements Show, help me support my family, and to grow the show, please, by all means, utilize those. If you like this show and you're watching this for the first time, subscribe to me, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, hit the notification button so you know when new episodes are coming out. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon.